All right, good afternoon, everyone. We hope that you've been having a great weekend so far. My name is Ria Gupta. I'm a grade 12 student, and I'm president of the Project Pulse Winnipeg executive team this year. So, Project Pulse is a nonprofit youth led organization, and our goal is to familiarize high school students with the field of the health sciences. In the past, this came in the form of an annual in person day long conference, but with the emergence of the pandemic last year, we switched seamlessly to an online platform, continuing to bring students events, resources, and opportunities for health sciences education. All of the exec team roles are filled with passionate and hardworking students from diverse cultural and academic communities in Winnipeg. And they're even in the audience, so maybe give us a quick wave if you have your cameras on. Thanks. All these roles contribute significantly to Project Pulse Winnipeg in unique ways, and they helped plan the surgeon panel today. So today, our professional relations director, Vicky, will be hosting this event. And on behalf of the team, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our audience, which consists of high school students from all across the province. We encourage everyone to have their cameras on for the best experience of engaging with the panelists, but it's not a requirement. Please note that this event will be recorded and that the recording is being posted on the Project Pulse Winnipeg's online platforms. This includes social media and our website. Please fill out and return the waiver attached to the email you received to confirm your consent to be recorded and posted as a part of the video. And if we do not have your permission to feature you in the video, you do not need to turn your camera on and you are welcome to engage through the chat function instead. So without further ado, I will hand this off to Vicky to introduce herself and today's distinguished guests.
Thanks, Ria. So hello, everyone. My name is Vicky, and I'm a grade 12 student. I'm the Professional Relations Director for this year, as Ria said, and I'll be hosting today's Surgeons panel. So we are so excited to be able to host a panel composed of such distinguished professionals, and I'm honored to introduce them today. So our first panelist is Dr. Alysa Almojuela, who's in her final year of her neurosurgery residency at the U of M. She received her schooling at the U of M, where she obtained a Bachelor of Sciences honors degree in microbiology in 2012 and joint Doctor of Medicine and Bachelor of Science in Medicine degrees in 2016. She also completed her Master of Science in 2021. And following residency, she will be completing a complex spine fellowship at the University of Calgary. Our next panelist, Dr. Biniam Kidane, is a thoracic and foregut surgeon with a special interest in minimally invasive and endoscopic approaches to benign and malignant thoracic and foregut disease. He completed his MD at the U of T and his general surgery residency at Western University. He then completed thoracic surgery residency at the University of Toronto and had the privilege of pursuing further training in interventional endoscopy at McGill. Dr. Kidane has a research interest in perioperative care, specifically in the thoracic surgery sphere, but also in all surgical disciplines. His major interest is in lung protective ventilation during thoracic surgery, as well as perioperative practice variation and quality improvement. And last but certainly not least, our final panelist for today is Dr. Richard Liu. So Dr. Liu is a thoracic surgeon with a clinical interest in minimally invasive surgery and advanced endoscopy. He completed medical school at the University of Alberta. He then completed general surgery residency and master's in community health and epidemiology at Dalhousie University. He completed his thoracic surgery residency at the U of M. Dr. Liu joined the Department of Surgery in 2019 as an assistant professor in thoracic surgery, and he is currently the postgraduate program director for thoracic surgery. And his clinical research interests include outcomes of minimally invasive and advanced endoscopic techniques in thoracic oncology, benign foregut surgery, and in surgical education. And he has particular methodologic interests in patient-reported outcomes, patient-important outcomes, and meta-analysis techniques. So with all those introductions done, with that, I'd like to hand it off to our panelists to begin their discussion. After the discussion, we will have time for pre-prepared questions and for the audience to ask any questions that they might have thought of just now. So feel free to take it away.
Not her sure who gets to go first, but Alyssa unmuted first, so maybe why don't you go ahead, Alyssa?
Sure. Thanks for having me, you guys. This is a really cool group and event that you have. I wish I had something like this when I was in high school, to be honest. So kudos to all of you. I guess I could just start by talking about my path so far to where I am now and kind of what neurosurgery is and what I do. So as you mentioned, I did the majority of my training here in Winnipeg. I don't know if anyone is from Sisler, but I was a Spartan back in the day. Back in high school, I definitely had an interest in the sciences. I also really loved English. I was in Sisler's Most Wanted for a number of years, so that was a lot of fun. Then I did my undergraduate training at the U of M. I got a Bachelor of Science in Microbiology. I did the honors program. So in my last year, I worked in a virology lab. I did all the usual kind of science courses to meet the prerequisites for med school. I also did have an interest in philosophy at the time, so I took a few courses in that as well. And I definitely think some of those skills have helped me in the rest of my training. Medical school then was 4 years. I did research during my summers off. I worked in a lab looking at the function of brain stem cells in the setting of stroke in mice brains. Then after med school, I started my neurosurgery residency. And in Canada, that's 6 years in total. In the US, neurosurgery residency is 7 years. In my residency program, there's also an option to take a year to do a Master of Science. So I did that a few years ago as well. I did my research thesis on seizure outcomes and quality of life outcomes after epilepsy surgery. And now I'm just a few months away from being done. There's a big exam at the end of residency called the Royal College exam, which for me is in about 2 weeks. So I'm studying a ton and drinking way too much coffee, but I'm really excited and starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Next up for me is fellowship training in spine surgery in Calgary, as you mentioned. That'll be a year long, and then after that, I'll be looking for an attending job as a neurosurgery and spine surgeon. So in terms of kind of insight about the field of neurosurgery, neurosurgery focuses on surgical diseases of the brain, the spine, spinal cord, and nerves. There's really a ton of variety in the kind of pathology that we see. So everything from brain and spine tumors, brain bleeds, aneurysm ruptures, spine fractures, surgery for epilepsy, surgery for things like Parkinson's disease, and a whole whack of other kind of more rare diseases. I will say neurosurgery is very technology dependent. So we use special machines in our surgeries that allow us to match up a patient's MRI scan to what we're doing and what we're seeing in live time so that we know kind of exactly where we are in the brain. We operate using specialized microscopes regularly, and in some centers, they're also using things like robotics and virtual reality during certain parts of surgery. As a resident, my schedule has been fairly variable. For me, the usual day at the hospital starts at 6 a.m. and ends around 4 or 5 unless I'm on call. Most days I'm in the operating room, but I'm also part of a team taking care of patients that are admitted to the hospital, seeing consults in the emergency departments, or from anywhere in the hospital really, and sometimes seeing patients in clinic too. Several times a month, I do on-call shifts where I'm in the hospital for 26 hours, available for consults, any emergency surgeries, and basically continuing to take care of our patients. Every day is unique. There's really a lot of variety, again, in the diseases we see and therefore the kind of surgeries that we do. And it's definitely a high acuity type of specialty. There are emergencies often, and the stakes are pretty high when you're dealing with the brain and spine. So you often have to make some quick decisions and move quickly to respond to those emergencies. But that excitement and acuity is something that I've always been drawn to. So I know it sounds really busy, but it's also truly a really rewarding specialty. You're with patients for some of the worst parts of their life. It's never a good thing when you have to see a neurosurgeon, but you also really have the opportunity to have an impact on every patient, the opportunity to improve quality of life or save their life in some situations. And that's truly been a privilege and something that I hope I'd never take for granted. And that's kind of the whirlwind introduction for me, I guess. Happy to take any questions, or the others can introduce themselves.
Why don't we, I'll let Dr. Kidane go next because he was next in the intro list.
Can you hear me okay? Well, might I make a suggestion? In fact, it might be helpful to take the trajectory from Dr. Is it Almojuela? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah, that's great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. From Dr. Almojuela to maybe Dr. Liu, then to me, because I think it probably takes a sort of a more, I guess.
Junior to senior.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a trajectory that you kind of see. I think it makes a little more sense if that's okay with you guys.
Sounds good. Dr. Kidane is actually a very old man. He just looks very young. My name is Richard Liu. I'm one of the thoracic surgeons. Dr. Kidane and I are both thoracic surgeons at the University of Manitoba. Alysa had a very, very well put together introduction there. I don't think I have anything as good as that, unfortunately. So basically, I'll lay out kind of my trajectory for my career so far, and I'll give you a sense of what Biniam and I do on a day-to-day basis. But a lot of you, I think this is something that I never had as a high school student. And so I think as a result of that, I probably fell into a lot of things just by being in certain places at certain times. I probably wasn't as planned and as everyone here is. I'm sure you guys are much more organized than I was when I was your age. But I originally started my undergrad in Calgary, and I don't know if Biniam knows this, but I was going to be an anthropologist, specifically a primatologist. So I don't know if you guys know this, at the University of Calgary, they have a world-class primatology division, which is a weird thing because there's no monkeys in Calgary, obviously. But this is what I thought I was going to do. And so actually, when I applied to med school, it was one of the things that I was thinking of. But if I hadn't gone to med school at the time, my following year was actually going to be going to Uruguay and looking at monkey poo from a tree for a 6-month rotation. As it turned out, I went a little bit of a different route. And then when I went into medical school, I actually thought he's learning all kinds of stuff about me. But when I went into medical school, I actually thought I was going to be a pediatrician at first. And so from pediatrics, that somehow shifted into pediatric surgery, which then somehow shifted into general surgery, which then shifted to surgical oncology. And then from an oncology point of view, it shifted to thoracic surgery. So then I think that can kind of lead us into what we do as thoracic surgeons. So a thoracic surgeon in Canada is a little bit different than a thoracic surgeon in some other places in the world. So you've probably heard of cardiothoracic surgeons. So those are people who operate on the heart and also the other things in the chest. In Canada, we're usually from here to kind of upper belly here, but excluding things in the heart. And so why did I kind of go this weird circuitous route from pediatrics all the way to thoracic surgery? Well, it has to do with a couple of things. One of them is the stuff that we deal with on a regular basis goes across a very broad spectrum, very much the same as Alysa, where we see some diseases that are give people problems with their quality of life, and you have an opportunity to help people there. We see a lot of cancer, and a large majority of our practice is in lung cancer, esophageal cancer, things like that. And that was a particular interest of mine, and I think that most people that go into thoracic surgery probably have a similar kind of interest. I know that Biniam and I share an idea. We have a similar worldview in terms of trying to treat people, in the sense that what you want to do is you want to do the least destructive thing to somebody that you can, and still have them get the result that you want. And so I think you heard from the bios, Dr. Kidane and I are both very interested in things like advanced endoscopy and minimally invasive surgery in an attempt to try to do those kinds of things. And so thoracic surgery for me is a perfect combination of being able to do a whole bunch of things that span from minimally invasive things all the way to, you know, what you might call maximally invasive things or big surgery. I think it's very rewarding. I think it's very interesting. Alysa's schedule that she told you about, I think, is shared by all surgeons, and that we all deal with things that happen in the middle of the night, and people don't get sick at convenient times all the time. And so, you know, we do work kind of bizarre hours sometimes, and there's a lot of kind of effort and a lot of time that's invested into it. But I'm going to echo her comments that this is incredibly rewarding, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll pass it on to Biniam here, Dr. Kidane.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff. I have to say, I didn't know a lot of that stuff.
You didn't know about the monkey stuff, eh?
No, I didn't know. I didn't know about the monkey business. No,
Yeah.
We you know, we've been working together for almost 5 years now, right? And we now share an office like we're right beside each other. So so I didn't know about all that. It took a panel for me to find out about that. So no, I have to say I'm glad we did it in this order, partly because I gave me a chance to reflect a little bit on people's trajectory through their careers, as well as, you know, fundamentally what can we offer you? You guys are already ahead of the curve, like, you know, compared to, just like Dr. Liu was saying. You know, I never did anything like this. So a lot of power derives from information. You know, information is power, right? And so just being able to be informed about what is out there, what careers are possible, what is it really like, that it even exists, is a form of power that I think you have to actively seek out, and sometimes you accidentally fall into it. I mean, I think most of us did. So I really congratulate you all for being active participants in creating your own futures and destinies. Now, I have to say, like, from my own self, I'm very passionate about talking to people in high school, and even earlier than that, especially if they've never had any exposure to people in the medical field. Because they would never have had the opportunity to know what it's about. So in many ways, they are on the outside looking in, and it's very difficult to break in to something you never have access to. So I'll give you an example. So, you know, Dr. Almojuela and Dr. Liu talked about you know, their undergraduate studies in university. And then their medical school and the trajectory after that. So I have to tell you a really funny story. So when I in my first year of medical school, I won't even tell you before that, but in my first year of medical school at the University of Toronto, they have this this program where they call it Arts and Science of Clinical Medicine. So what you're supposed to do right from early on is that you get the chance to, instead of just doing book learning and doing anatomy dissections on cadavers and testing on anatomy and that kind of stuff, you actually get a chance to have a small group of 5 people, medical students in first year, and you have a mentor who's typically like a junior faculty member, like a doctor, a physician, or a resident, and you would learn about the art of medicine, meaning seeing patients, learning about physical examination and that kind of thing. So our first session, we sat down and we were introducing each other, and our group leader, he asked, "Oh, so what are you guys interested in doing in your career for the future? What do you plan yourselves? You know, what's you going to do in 5 years?" And so we were going through different people, and then there was one person that came before me, and she said, "I want to be an orthopedic surgical oncologist." And I didn't even know what that was. So I had no idea what those words even meant. Like, I know what surgery means. I didn't even know what that was. So I was like, oh, geez, this is going to be a tough room. And then the next person said, oh, you know, I'm really struggling. I think I really want to go into medicine. and then I want to become a cardiologist. And I said again, what are you talking about? Aren't we already in medicine? That as in this medical school? But it turns out, actually, I didn't know this at the time, but once you do medical school, there are two major branches of practicing in medicine. One is internal medicine, which they call medicine, which incorporates a lot of the different specialties that you know, so like cardiology, hematology, endocrinology, those kind of things. And then there's surgery, which is there's a whole bunch of different surgical disciplines, like, you know, thoracic surgery or neurosurgery or cardiac surgery. So there's a surgical version. So anyway, I you know, just to tell you that I tell you the story because even at that point, I didn't, you know, there's such a discrepancy between some people who maybe have been exposed to it all their lives from their family members. And they know that all these details, and so they're armed with information and they can make all these plans, get prepared in advance. And then there are people who don't even know what the different specialties are and that medicine is actually a thing. So you don't have to feel bad if you're in either boat, but I think it's important to try to seek out information so that you can, you know, land in the right place and go in the right direction. So that being said, it's a long-winded introduction, but you know, from my perspective, most of my undergraduate, I guess, career, I focused on laboratory medicine. I actually really wanted to become a pathologist initially, believe it or not. And then I realized that you know, that wasn't for me. At one point I wanted to become a psychiatrist and I realized it wasn't for me. So I did a lot of undergraduate work in psychology, actually. And then in medical school, I thought, again, I wanted to be a psychiatrist. But as time went on, I really delved a lot into surgery and intensive care and how the body breathes and uses their lungs to work. So that's why I ended up where I am now. I'm really interested in research as well. There's so much to say about the trajectory. There's so much to describe about experiences, but if it's okay with you, I might actually just not delve too much into that, other than to maybe let it be driven by the questions that you might have, because probably that's much more important than me telling you about how I used to want to be a priest, and that's why I ended up being advised to become a surgeon and a doctor in many ways, actually, and I can explain it later if you guys want, but I actually don't see that much difference in the way that I approach being a surgeon or a surgical oncologist or a thoracic surgeon than the way I did as an altar boy and the way I felt and, you know, in my view as potentially becoming a priest in the future. For various reasons, I strayed away from that, of course.
That's a really interesting lead in. So somebody really has to ask him a question about that, because we got to dive into that one, I think.
Yes, thank you so much. So I guess we'll just move on to our questions period for this panel. And prior to this event, as I said before, panelists submitted any questions that they had, or sorry, not panelists, the audience. And if anyone in the audience right now have any questions, feel free to just type it up in the chat and we'll get to it as soon as we can. So our first section of questions kind of revolves around your journey to become a surgeon. And lucky for Dr. Liu, who wants to know about Dr. Kidane's path to become a priest, the first question is, did you want to be anything else besides a surgeon? Why did you choose to be a surgeon? And did you ever regret it? And this question is open for all three of you to answer. So just take your time.
Maybe I'll answer last. I'll take a Heather Stephenson on that one.
Sure. I guess I can answer first. I think we've all kind of alluded to kind of a haphazard way in ending up where we are now. I also initially wanted to do pediatrics when I first started medical school. But when I started my surgery rotations, I realized I really liked working with my hands. In terms of just in general why I became a surgeon, I always knew that I wanted to have a career that involved helping people. You know, at my core, that's always what I wanted. I guess my interest in science, love for working with my hands led me to surgery, and then eventually neurosurgery for, you know, the high acuity situations. the complexity of surgeries. And I just always thought the nervous system was really interesting.
I wanted to be a basketball player, but I lacked a significant amount of height and skill. So that was a problem. And then I think I already said before, I was going to be a primatologist. So it was one of these things where there was actually a lot of discussion around that. And a couple of my mentors, I wanted to do it in the field, and they said that living in a treehouse lost its romance a lot quicker than you thought it did. So I started exploring some other possibilities, but maybe it's a lack of planning on my part. But I think a lot of the things that I ended up doing were only things that I really realized that I truly enjoyed once I saw them or experienced them, which just kind of gets back to Dr. Kidane's point, which is that having information on different things is a really powerful thing, because there is an idea in your head that you can get sometimes about what a particular job is, and then once you experience it or you experience something else, then you get a different sense of it. So I ended up in the position that I am in right now because this was the specialty, and this was the career that I thought would keep my interest for the rest of my career, that would be challenging for me, and that I would enjoy. But you know, like Dr. Kidane said, for me, it was one of these things where, you know, I didn't have as much information probably going into it, and then I learned what I actually wanted as I went through, and I think a lot of people are like that. So
yeah, I mean, definitely, it's a rarity to have people to know exactly where it is they're going to end up. Our field is especially emblematic of that, because there are so many steps to get to where we are right now, right? That there's you have to get through undergraduate studies, then you do medical school, and then you have to choose some sort of specialization, and then you may sort of there's different node and branch points at which you could veer in very different directions. So it's very difficult to know at the beginning what you're going to like and how, it's not just about what you like, it's are the people that are in that field people you can get along with, right? There's a lot of these factors which you may not appreciate initially. And actually, I tell this to, believe it or not, people that are medical students, when they're trying to choose their residency programs, they're very anxious about this because they don't want to make the wrong choice. Residents, when they're finished and they're trying to choose a fellowship, they don't want to make the wrong choice. And so you can imagine that there's no wrong answer really, and there's no irreversible answer. So you don't have to feel too anxious about not knowing where you're going to end up. A lot of times that's part of the adventure. Of course, you want to try to make some plans and set some good guidelines for yourself, right? So you can succeed. But yeah, my desire to become a priest very early. I will say this, actually. You have to really look deeply at the things you want it to be. Because, as comical as they may seem, a basketball player, a priest, all these kind of things, there may be a kernel of some core value in it that you're drawn to. Maybe, with basketball, it's athleticism, it's technical skill, those kind of things. With maybe becoming a priest or doing missionary work, maybe it's, really putting yourself out and serving, being of service to people in the most fundamental way, trying to, take care of people's as whole people, not just as body parts, those kind of things, right? So yeah, I think most of the things I wanted to be were reflections of some core values that I was very passionate about. And then over time I realized that particular job didn't deliver all those parts. There's a lot of things in there which the baggage that came with that job didn't want to deal with, right? So, obviously I didn't become a priest for various reasons, but I think my job as a surgeon who deals with people at their most vulnerable moments. So majority of our practice is cancer related. So it is an extreme privilege and a humbling privilege to be able to deal with people in the darkest moments and most vulnerable moments of their life. And you need to have a certain kind of countenance and temperament in order to be able to connect with people at those vulnerable moments. And not everybody has that. And so I find, whereas some people may not find that part of their job rewarding, I find that part of my job very rewarding because I can offer, I try to offer cure to people when I can, but we're not God. We're not omnipotent. We can't cure certain people. We can't solve all problems, but you can still treat people with humanity. You can offer them comfort. You can see them as a person. And so all these things, I found those are the crux of, being a priest that I brought to, being a surgeon dealing with cancer. I wanted to be just like Dr. Liu, I actually was interested in anthropology and psychology and those kind of things. And again, I think those part of it is just trying to really understand the human being, understand the human experience, so that way you can actually relate to people. And that's a very powerful thing. I have to say that probably the most powerful thing I bring to the table, even though I think I'm very technically talented, like I can do things with my hands, I can, put organs together, rearrange them, rearrange body parts, rearrange body systems. I don't think that's technically we could train robots to do that, but you can't train robots to do the most important part of the job as I see it, which is to connect with people and to give them comfort in their darkest moments, those kind of things. So, that's where, I kind of saw over time, the different careers that I thought I wanted to be a psychiatrist for those reasons, to understand the human condition. But I realized then the actual practice of psychiatry is not something I could tolerate, because as it turns out, I have a deep desire in me to fix people. So in psychiatry, you don't typically fix people, you help them learn how to cope better with their problems, right? So that fundamentally, as a person, I could not do that because I felt the need to fix people. So I had a hard time. It didn't, it's just not something in me to be able to handle that. So I couldn't be a good psychiatrist. And I realized that right away. I love kids. I want to be in pediatrics. But I realized when I was doing my pediatrics rotations that it broke my heart every time the little kids got sick and I couldn't do my job. So I couldn't do it. So these kind of things, you realize all the aspirations you have, you may keep a kernel of it, and it may inform your future decisions. Don't be disappointed if you don't end up in that field. It may just take from that an important core value and use it for your future.
I think you must be hitting on something, Biniam. I thought about psychiatry and pediatrics as well. I don't know what it is, but maybe there's something that funnels us towards the same kind of specialty through that. Do you think about psychiatry, Alysa? She's shaking her head no.
Oh. Pediatrics, yes.
Great, thank you so much for your inspiring responses. So our next question is, what high school or university courses did you take? And specifically for high school, what courses would you advise besides the obvious tri-sci?
I'm assuming when you say tri-sci, you're talking about biology, chemistry, and physics.
Yes.
Okay. I was not familiar with that particular moniker.
Don't use anything that's too hip. Neither Dr. Kidane and I will understand what's going on. I think Biniam at least has Twitter though, so he's one up on me. I'll answer this. I'll answer this question. I think it feels like it matters a lot more when you're going through it than it does afterwards. Because I remember really stressing out about the high school courses that I took, and making sure that I was taking the right things. And then at the same time, when you're going through your undergrad, the same kind of thing. And then in med school, it's which of the electives that you take it. So I'm not, in my mind, I feel like it should be interest driven, probably, because I don't think that when we're talking about like going into various health science specialties, there's probably, I'm sure, requirements for different degrees to enter into them and stuff like that. And that's probably something to keep in mind. From my point of view, now that I'm an old man, is I think that probably, you know, your university and your high school courses should be driven by interest, because I'm not sure, apart from the mandatory stuff that you have to take, that how much it actually plays into you know, the eventual career that you go into. Anyways, maybe the other panelists have different opinions on that, but I remember stressing out a lot about kind of each of those choices, and then in retrospect thinking, well, you know, I probably could have made any number of different choices in that situation. Things would have turned out probably different, but probably still okay. So my perspective on it now is I think stuff like that is probably should be driven by what you're really interested in.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything you said. I mean, I had medical school classmates with degrees in music, a whole bunch with arts degrees. And so I agree. I think it should be interest driven. And I think there are skills to be transferred from, you know, virtually any non-science degree you may go for. And typically those are, you know, the students who kind of look at things a different way and are able to bring different opinions and kind of diversity to the med school class. So I totally agree that I think it should be interest driven.
Awesome, thank you. Oh, sorry, did you want to say something? Yeah, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Great, okay.
I'll just add one more thing to that. Just like I think people think that they need like certain reference letters and like along the way, certain things. I think if I remember correctly, my reference letters for my medical school entrance was, well, I was going to be a monkey guy, right? So it was from 2 monkey people and an English professor. And so that was probably not like a classic reference conglomerate. But those were things that I was interested in. And I think, you know, as you go through, if you're interested and passionate about certain things, then people see that. So
I'm guessing by that you meant like professors, experts in monkeys.
yeah, but not actual monkeys. Yeah, not actual people with interest in monkeys.
Yeah.
Thank you. So our next question is, what is one piece of advice that helped you through high school? Or this could also just be, if you had to give an advice to our audience who are currently in high school, what advice would that be? Take your time. That's a pretty like general and pretty loaded question.
I think for kind of advice through high school, for me, something that helped was just the mindset that you can really do anything you want to. There's, you know, a whole world after high school to explore, even though sometimes it may feel like, you know, the 4 walls of your high school, that's like the biggest thing. That's all your focus is on at the moment. There's a whole life after that. And I also think, like speaking from experience, it can be easy to feel discouraged about pursuing different things, both during and after high school. You know, you may feel like you're not smart enough or not talented enough, or you don't have, you know, the money to go to medical school, but there are probably a lot more avenues than you realize to get to where you want to be. For example, if you're worried about the costs, there are scholarships and student loans available. If you feel like your grades aren't quite there yet, I got a lot of C's in my first year of undergrad, and I think I've turned out okay so far. So, you know, with the right planning, the right support, really anything is possible, and you shouldn't be selling yourself short.
Thank you, Dr. Maria. That response was very inspiring and inspirational. So our next question is, do you have any tips for someone who wants to go into surgery, or just, again, any advice that you would provide to someone who specifically wishes to go down that path?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably related to the some advice that probably I'd give in general is expose yourself. Expose yourself to as much information and experiences as you can. So like, this kind of session here, meet people, you can never experience something if you don't ask to experience it, or if you don't put yourself out there. So the same, the same goes for trying to become a surgeon, trying to become whatever, right? Is just, go out and try to seek out people that can expose you to those experiences. And if like you meet somebody that has a job that you're interested in, ask them, just send them an email or approach them and say, hey, I'm really interested in what you do. Is there any way I can shadow you? Or I can talk to you about it. You can tell me a little more about it. And most people are pretty actually like accommodating about that. I never actually knew that was a thing. Like that's the thing, right? People, again, information is power. If you don't know that shadowing is a thing, or that mentoring is a thing, you will never actually capitalize or use that, right? So expose yourself to these things and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. The I think hopefully one of the good things about forums like this is that you realize that if you're going to be asking people to shadow or to go work with them, that they're actually hopefully kind of normalish. Like, we're all a little weird, but it's not like, like you going and asking somebody who's not like a regular person. Most people are actually pretty happy to show you what they do. And maybe it's a surgeon trait, but most surgeons really like talking about themselves a lot. So, like they'll tell you all kinds of stuff. But also, like the question of somebody who wants to go into surgery right now, who's in high school, I'll go back to what Dr. Almojuela said, which was keep an open mind right now, right? Everything is out there in front of you. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can do. So you might say, hey, I want to be a surgeon now, but hey, I wanted to be a basketball player. Biniam wanted to be a priest, right? So, keep an open mind and, gather all that information and see what actually makes you happy.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So our next question is, what is the toughest life decision that you had to make as a surgeon? Or in other words, did you ever have to face a conflict where you had to choose between your work and personal life, or you had to make a decision that would greatly impact one of those lives only, and you had to kind of make priorities and choose either your work life or your personal life?
Tough question.
I guess if you can't think of a specific example, maybe you could give advice on how you can kind of distinguish your priorities and how you can be able to kind of make that decision yourself.
Yeah, I think this is an ongoing thing. This is I think everybody I think I could use some advice on this. It's always a balance. There's only so much time in a day, and there's only so much stuff you can do. So part of it has to do with just trying to be honest with yourself about what things are really actually important to you, and then trying to prioritize those things. So what would an example? So an example would be, where you choose to work, maybe something like that, right? So there are multiple factors that go into that, some of which are personal and some of which are professional, right? So anywhere that you decide you might want a job might be able to offer you certain things. There's certain resources that are available for you to do a particular job, or that job, aside from all the surgery stuff, any job, right? That job offers you a role and some kind of satisfaction in the work. That might be only available in one place, but say that's in a place that's separate from where all your family is, or something like that. So those are kind of, it's tough. It's tough. As I said, I think I could still use advice from a lot of people on this kind of thing. But it's about trying to figure out how to make your priorities come to the top of the list and make sure that those really important things that are important to you are met. And then those other things that are also important to you, trying to find a way to make that work. So, you know, if you're not close to your family, what can you do about flying them out or having them around? Or what can you do about, you know, weekly dinner call on a Sunday? Or, you know, there's things that you can do, but it's, I think, probably just has to do with prioritizing, and then also problem solving around it. Those are very vague things, right? But I think that's kind of how this is. And I wish I could tell you something more concrete than that, but I'm not even sure I'm the right person to be saying anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think the whole concept of having work-life balance looks a little different for everyone. But I would say that having a life of some sort outside of work and having a support system is not only possible, but also, at least for me, has been really important to be able to get through my training with, you know, a decent head on my shoulders. I think in the past, there used to be this assumption that, at least during residency, you basically put your whole life on hold to focus just on work. And I think that that's flawed, and that's also changing. I don't think you need to put your entire life on hold to become a neurosurgeon. I think you need to focus a lot of energy on that goal, but it's also important to balance that with other hobbies, personal relationships, so that you don't burn out. And yeah, there isn't a one answer about how to achieve that. But I do think in the end that balance looks a little different for everyone, depending on what people choose to prioritize.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, like because you guys have hit on a very important point here, but you should know that I don't. You're talking about different levels, like residents and interns. The work-life balance was so skewed in the past that, you know, the term resident exists because those were, when you were training, you had to live in the hospital. You couldn't leave. And a level lower than a resident was actually an intern, which is basically a prisoner. You're even more of a prisoner in order so that you can learn everything. So it's very different now. And by the time you guys get into medicine, if you choose that path or surgery, it'll likely be very different and even be more involved. But I just hate to be like philosophical guy, but you have to realize that there is always a tension between your work and your life, and there's even more of a tension if you view your work as a vocation, because it's something that fulfills you and you see it as more than a like a 9 to 5 job. You have more passion for it in that way. It's something more to you than just a way to generate a paycheck. So the tension between balancing your life, which has meaning for you and is rewarding for you, and your vocation and your work, also meaningful for you, becomes challenging, right? So everybody deals with that prioritization and that balance differently. And that's part of the exposure. That's part of learning about the different fields. Like, you know, I agree with Dr. Almojuela. You can do anything you want, but you may not want to do everything. You may see a field and you're like, you know, I really like the technical aspects of this field, but the demands of the field, the people, all these things, that's not for me. And that's only a decision that you can make once you are around that, environment, right? So try not to prejudge it in any way. Expose yourself.
Great, thank you. All of your responses were very insightful. So now I'll be answering just quickly a couple questions from the audience right now. So one question is, at what point in life did you make the stern decision to become a surgeon? So like, were you in high school already, undergrad, residency, etc.?
I'll answer this one quickly. I'll finally give you a quick answer. Surgery for me was in my 4th year of medical school. So probably a little bit after a lot of people had already decided in terms of their electives and stuff like that. It was the thing that I was exposed to during medical school that I became the most interested in. But for me, it was 4th year of med school, actually.
Yeah, I'll answer quickly as well. For me, it was the 2nd year of medical school, which I think for a lot of people in neurosurgery is a little bit late as well, but it's never too late.
Yeah, I decided at the last possible minute, or like in the 4th year when we have to select the button to say what program are you going to choose. I had to choose between one or the other, and I chose one of the two opposites of each other. So it's never too late.
Thank you. That's definitely very relieving that it just makes me feel a lot less rushed and I don't feel as like hurried to find my path. So our next question is, what type of volunteer programs or job would you recommend to do before or during medical school or undergrad school that would help you, that would prepare you better for your path of being a surgeon?
Find something you're interested in, I think. What did I do for volunteer stuff? I was a big brother for a little while. I thought that was really, really rewarding. That was in my undergrad. I worked in a lab for a bit, a monkey lab, but that's because that's what I thought I was going to be interested in. I think trying to plan all of the things that are going to lead you particularly to one way, it's good. Like Dr. Kidane was saying, you got to get all of the information, but as far as volunteer, especially volunteering stuff, do something you're passionate about, right? Just do something that really interests you. Sometimes from a job point of view, you're doing it because you just need to have some money, right, to pay for things. I know I did that. I think I worked at Pizza Hut for a while in at end of high school and stuff because I needed some spending money. So I mean, there's different reasons that you do different jobs, especially for the volunteer stuff. Though I think find something that you want to be there. You shouldn't be showing up at a volunteer position just to be there. You should be showing up there because you're interested in what's going on. Yeah.
You don't have to. You also don't have to feel bad if you can't do volunteering. Like I think this is one of the major things that medical school admission committees and some graduate schools are learning more and more is that they used to have this sort of formula about who's acceptable, who's a good candidate. And you had to fit you have to have X amount of volunteering, and the more exotic the volunteering, the more points you get, and then the kind of like really cool jobs that you might have done or research you might have done, that kind of stuff. And they're realizing more and more that that is a reflection of systemic uh, um, uh, issues, right? Like that people who are from more advantaged backgrounds have the advantage of knowing that they should be doing this stuff and also being able to secure volunteering things that are attractive. In fact, or that they don't actually have to work to help support their families, right? You know, like if you have to work at Pizza Hut because you gotta actually help make money for your family to eat, it doesn't leave you a lot of time to volunteer at a place to get it on paper, right? So people are realizing that more now. So I say that to say that you don't have to feel bad. It doesn't exclude you. So try to find meaningful experiences, but be honest in your applications. If you have to, you know, I had to, you know, my resume is I worked 8 years at this place, and I had a little bit of time, and I volunteered at Big Brothers because I had, you know, this family situation, and I had to make ends meet for my family. That there's no shame in that, and that doesn't exclude you from contention, from being a contender to get into professional schools.
Yeah, I think Dr. Kidane is spot on there. I think more and more people are realizing that a lot of certain things that especially the exotic volunteer things, these are coming from a place of privilege, right? And it's not wrong to do those things, but it is the ability to do that is because of the position that you're in, right? And so I think again, people are realizing that more, and I think also the people that are making decisions on things like this are way more conscientious of stuff like that. And so I completely agree with what Dr. Kidane said.
Thank you. So our next question is directed to Dr. Almojuela, but then you guys, everyone, this question is also open to Dr. Liu and Dr. Kidane, but it's just directed to Dr. Almojuela. So that question is, do you regret studying for more than 8 years and also over 3 years residency? And is it worth the stress and time? And would you advise people to do it?
I really don't have regrets at this point. I'm still early on. No, I'm just kidding. I firmly believe that the time is going to pass by anyway, so you might as well spend it doing something that you like. That being said, if you don't love it, if you don't feel a sense of purpose from it, then it definitely would not be worth the time and energy. So it's a matter of making sure this is the right fit. And like we've kind of been saying, one of the ways to do that is to try it out. So my biggest advice that I often tell medical students who are considering a neurosurgery residency is really to try it out. And, not just a day or two, but do a rotation for a few weeks, do call shifts, see patients, get a real sense of what the day-to-day is like and how that can work with your personal life. So for me, it has been worth it. And I would advise people who are interested to, try it out for themselves before committing.
It's a big investment of time to get through the training. So I completely agree. I think one thing to keep in mind when you're, not just like surgery, what kind of medicine, but like what kind of job you want in general. Keep in mind what, just you have to have an idea of what the actual everyday is like. And then everything has something really cool. Like almost every job has like something that's super, super cool. And you can get kind of baited in by that. So you kind of have to know what the really cool thing is, but what the thing that you're really not going to like that much is too. And then also kind of what the day-to-day is. And that just has to do with exposure. It's a big time investment. That's what the original question was, and I've kind of been skirting around it a little bit. But it is a big time and it is big energy investment. So I think what almost anybody who's in surgery would say is, if this is your vocation, as Dr. Kidane would say, then it's worth it. But it has to be something that you really want to do and are passionate about. Otherwise, If you're just like, well, this is just my job, then oh man, there's a whole lot of other jobs that come with a lot less training, right? So yeah, I think I think I speak probably for everybody here that when I say that, probably from all the panelists' perspective, we do consider this, like more than just going to work. And so I think probably all of us would say that the training was worth it. But you have to be kind of honest with yourself about that. Are you getting to the end of it because you want it to be more than a job? Then yes, it's totally worth the training. But if you're doing it to just make your money and then go home, and then there's a lot of other things that probably would take a lot less time and effort.
I agree.
Thank you. So our next question is, how do I set myself up as a strong med school applicant?
I'm gonna pass this one down to Alysa because she's the most recent applicant, and I sometimes feel like if I applied to med school right now that I wouldn't be a very good applicant. So I'm gonna pass this one to you because people are really impressive these days. Like all of you, I'm sure would have been way more impressive than I was when I applied at this.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Dr. Kidane, are you involved in any of the med school thing? I haven't been in a number of years, so.
Yeah, I mean, I was heavily involved in the medical school admissions processes like many years ago. But I guess I mean in terms of who actually experienced it most recently, probably not me. So maybe Dr. Almojuela may have more insight than I do at this exact moment. But it is, I will say, it is an arms race. Every year, every successive generation, people are stronger and stronger and stronger. So what separates them becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. So, you're asking a very important question, which is how do I separate myself from the pack? Like there's the obvious things, of course, make sure you have as good grades as you can. So one of the things that people told me is I was, when I asked for advice about this, in fact, it only happened too late. By that time, it was too late. But as they said, you have to choose something that you're interested in, and so that way you can actually enjoy it and you can succeed at it, and you can also, if it doesn't pan out, you won't have wasted your time doing something you didn't enjoy. So that's a major thing. The other part is you need to have enough background in your course loads to be able to do well in whatever. If they're still doing the MCAT, who even knows? I don't even know. Are they still doing the MCAT? Are you guys still doing the MCAT? Is that true? Because somebody confirmed that. So I think some schools don't require it. I know when I applied, some schools didn't require it, some schools required it. So you have to kind of know that kind of information. And then there's all this other stuff around, making yourself an attractive candidate. So like the volunteering stuff, having interesting experiences, having lived life, understanding the human condition. Like I said before, right? If I'm on a panel of people of selecting medical students, right? What stands out to me isn't necessarily like if a person has a 3.9 versus a 4.0 or something like that. What stands out is a person who has experienced things and who speaks like they're a human being, right? So these kind of things are important. But I in terms of the specific practicalities, I have to tell you, I don't think that there's any one ideal candidate, to be honest.
I think Dr. Kidane makes a really good point there. I think the grades and the MCAT scores and stuff like that, I think you want them to be enough to not rule you out. I think essentially, right? Like if you're trying to apply for a GPA of 1 point, does it go that low? 1? Can you get a GPA of 1?
No, I think it's like GCS.
I don't even know. I don't even know what the scale is.
I think it's like GCS. It doesn't work that way.
Okay. All right. Sure. So, I mean, well, I'll speak from the latest. The applications that I'm most familiar with are the thoracic surgery residents or fellows that are coming through. And as I said, people are getting more and more impressive, but I don't go and look at like what your GPA was in undergrad for that, or what your MCAT score was for that. They've all kind of met a certain level. So I agree with Biniam. It's the people that kind of stand out are people that are doing something that they're really kind of interested and passionate about, or have like a very interesting life experience. Because when you talk to people like that, man, they draw you in, right? Like they're talking about an experience that they had, and you can tell that they loved it. And that kind of thing I find really stands out to me at this point. I can't say that I've seen anybody's GPA and it's really like floored me, but there's been times when I've talked to people and they've talked about their experiences, and I'm like, wow, that's really incredible, and that kind of thing really sticks with you.
Yeah, I would echo everything that's been said already. I don't have a lot of experience with the medical school interviews, but I do with our neurosurgery residency interviews, and same thing. I mean, everyone is coming in with a number of awards, research experience, good grades. So really how applicants can stand out is how they present themselves during the interview. So that might be something to kind of focus on when applying for medical school, practicing your interview skills, practicing questions, and trying to, present yourself in a way that is engaging to the people who are interviewing you. I think a lot of that also comes from having experiences that you are passionate about, though, and having those experiences that you can draw from during your interview.
Oh, I'm just going to say one more thing about an application thing that I don't know if people realize that this happens behind the scenes, but how you treat other people goes a really long way. And like the kind of compassion and respect that you have for people goes a really long way. One of the first things that I do when I am looking at applicants is I actually go to our program administrator, who gets all of the applications in and receives all the inquiries and stuff like that, and I say, what was your interaction like with all of these applicants here, and did they do anything that was kind of like a red flag thing, or did they mistreat you at all? So I think kind of keeping in mind have that level of respect for everybody is also something that personally I look for.
Thank you. So our next question is from the audience right now, and it is, have any of the cases you've worked with or patients you've worked with traumatized or impacted you throughout your career?
I don't know about traumatized as impacted. I'm not going out on a limb when I'm going to say that all of us have been significantly impacted by various patients that we've treated over the years. I think that any surgeon who tells you that they haven't, and I'd say mostly positive ways. Some of the experiences that you go through, if you're dealing with high stakes health situations, will be ones that don't turn out the way that you want them to, and certainly those can have an impact on you. I think one of the things that you learn as you go through it is how you learn from each of those situations, how you process them, how the people around you and your mentors and other people help you to get through and learn from situations like that. But if in surgery you are gonna have situations like that, I'd say the large majority of the patients that you remember though are positive things that you've taken from the experiences that you have. At least that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think there's some really high highs and there are some pretty low lows in terms of, memorable patient cases. And I personally think that that's been one of the most challenging parts of my residency, is just dealing with some of those really poor patient outcomes. Like Richard said, we treat some of the sickest patients, and sometimes surgery can hurt people. Sometimes bad outcomes are inevitable. That's part of a career, not just in surgery, but in medicine in general. And I think you develop a better understanding of that as you go through your training. I think that having a good support system within work and outside of work helps dealing with that kind of mental load. But yeah, it is definitely something to consider when going into medicine. Just given the kind of high stakes with what you deal with.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I agree. And I think if I can maybe highlight even more with surgery specifically rather than medicine, for example, because although it is true of all of medicine, surgeons especially, there is a potential for greater joy and greater highs and a greater lows, because the distance between somebody having a good outcome and a bad outcome is much closer to you when you're a surgeon than when you're a different kind of doctor, because it's entirely something different when you give a pill to somebody and they get better, or you give a pill to somebody and they get a side effect from it. It's a totally different feeling and a totally different distance between cause and effect and personal aspect of it than you doing something to their body, them trusting you with their body and their life, and you doing something to their body and something good happening, which is elation. Great. It's so amazing. It's so rewarding. Or you doing something to their body and something bad happening. The agency is so much more contracted when you're a surgeon that way. And so part of, like becoming a surgeon is not just training your hands how to do the tasks and training your mind about how to plan the tasks and do what's up, is to train you emotionally to be able to manage these kind of highs and lows, because it's, and I don't think anybody is born with it. And if you don't feel the emotionality of it as you're going through it, there's probably something wrong with you. Honestly, you're supposed to feel that. If something good happens, you're supposed to feel good. If something bad happens, you're supposed to feel bad. And that's okay. But you have to learn how to manage that. So I think that's probably the big difference between surgery and the other fields of medicine.
Yeah. One thing that I'll kind of say is that, like, some of my most positive patient experiences, or most positive family experiences, patients have come from actually patients that don't have a great outcome because of either their disease or something that happened. And so I think that's kind of going back to what Dr. Kidane said before, is I think there might be this idea out there that, where a surgeon, somebody tells you to operate on somebody, you go, you do a thing, and then you're like a technician, right? But it actually has to do a lot with the conversations and the discussions and the personal relationship that you develop with people that you then go on to operate or not operate on. So when we talk about like cases that went well or that didn't go well, I include in that also people that I never operated on, but that you had kind of, and I think that's, it's something that I think people don't really consider when they think about surgery, but there's a lot of that kind of communication and a lot of pretty deep relationships that you end up developing with people.
Yes, that makes lots of sense. Thank you. So our next question is, what was the best method to study and revise in pre-med or slash medical school?
I'm doing a lot of studying right now for my Royal College exam. So maybe I could answer. I honestly think that you just need to do what works for you. And people have different techniques. You know, some people will say things out loud, and that's what they've always done. That's worked for them. Some people, write their own notes. I never have done that. I hate writing my own notes. I've always thought it's a waste of time. Some people do flashcards. I think that can be helpful for a lot of people. So I don't think there's, one answer as to what the best way to study is. I think you just need to figure out a system that works for you and trust that system and go with that. So for me right now, I'm doing flashcards. I think being able to actively recall something and answer questions about something is a good way of kind of testing yourself and making sure that you actually understand the content. So that's what I would say.
No, don't get me started on learning styles. I've been doing a lot of reading about learning styles lately. It depends on your learning style is the short answer. But no, like you guys, you're all very clearly motivated people. You're on, this is a Saturday and you guys are in high school and you're here listening to us talk. So I think a lot of you probably have already figured out something that really works quite well for you. And so, yeah, you figure out what works well for you. I won't go into learning styles. I'm tired of hearing myself talk about learning styles.
Yeah, there's no one magic bullet. I agree.
Great, thank you. So our next question is, what is the biggest challenge you've faced and how does someone overcome it or find a way to cope with it?
I feel like we're doing a multiple mini interview for medical school right now. That sounds like a classic question. I'm gonna have to think about it a little bit.
Yes, please take your time. I guess for a challenge, this could go back to the choosing between your personal life or your work life, or maybe it could even be a challenge where you couldn't find your learning style of how you study, or you've got a really bad mark on a exam or test, and you try to overcome that challenge. So it doesn't have to be super, super like deep. It could just be like, oh, I got a bad mark. I was really sad. And then I got over it because I found the motivation within myself to get over it. So it's really any challenge, it works.
So I think there's so many different things you could say that I would say that probably the most difficult challenges I've had, and I think when you're a high achiever, I'm sure many of you are like that, is when you fail, right? When you fail at something, like you can't do something that you thought you were supposed to do, and how you react to that, how you grow from that, right? So anytime I think about those situations that I found the most challenging is when I encountered that failure, the thing I thought I was supposed to do, but I couldn't do. The greatest lessons I've learned from that are that you have to be careful. Just because you're failing doesn't mean you have to lash out at other people. And I think that's a very important a growth lesson. I don't know if that's a correct question and answer that you're looking for, but you mentioned, Vicky, a few sort of like different challenges as examples, but I realize over time that difficult is only difficult and challenging is only challenging until more difficult and more challenging comes along. So you will be in your life encountering successive things that make you realize the thing you had before probably wasn't as challenging as you thought, but was helping you to become stronger, better, whatever. smarter to meet that next challenge. So you just have to be able to um, learn the lesson of that challenge rather than, point fingers at other people, lash out at other people. Like, own the challenge, own the failure, and grow. That's what I would say for myself is that the greatest challenge was when I failed. I failed miserably at doing something I wanted to do.
Thank you. That was a perfect response. So this is probably the last question we have time for today, and it is how did you fare in high school academic wise, and were there certain things outside of the regular academic scope that you did in high school in order to take steps towards a medical degree?
Should we go in order, or is this going to be like a why don't we go in order so that nobody gets out of it?
Sure. I did okay in high school. I was a bit of a nerd in high school, to be honest, so I cared about my grades. At that point, I didn't really want to, wasn't thinking about going into medical school, so I wasn't doing a lot to get into medical school. I was pretty involved in like student council and stuff like that, purely out of interest. And I did a lot of choir and dance in high school.
I'll go next. I did okay. I did fine in high school. Again, yeah, like going back to the fact that I wasn't planning on being a doctor. I didn't really do a lot of stuff in high school that led towards that. What did I do in high school? I played basketball, volleyball, football. I had to drop out of. I was in the band in high school in grade 10. Biniam's learned all kinds of stuff about me probably. I played the Barry sax actually, but I had to drop it because it conflicted with football practice, and I made a decision. In retrospect, I think I'd probably much rather play the saxophone better now than the football thing, because the football thing went nowhere. But yeah, I know. I mean, like, I don't think I probably wasn't the greatest student in the world in high school, but I got okay grades, I guess. I played some sports, did a little bit of music. Yeah, I think high school students are a lot more impressive than I was back then, in terms of both like kind of. I think people are more mature now than they were, but like honestly, like really, I think people are a lot more mature these days than I was in high school, and I think they have a better sense of kind of what their options are and what the possibilities are, and they're a lot more conscientious of all of the other things that are going on. So I don't think that was helpful at all. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, like I think most of the panelists, I did pretty well in high school. Like I wasn't the top student. Maybe like top 10. Who knows? I don't even know. I definitely was not the top, student in university. Like, although I did get good marks in university undergrad. I didn't really go. I didn't really decide to even apply for medical school until like like first or second year probably of undergrad. So I didn't really do the typical things that you're supposed to do at the time, right? Um, like I in high school I did the same stuff. I was played sports, not excessively, just one sport really, soccer, competitively, and then I was also in the band. I played alto sax, but I stuck with it for 4 years or 5 years at the time. Um, and but like I was very heavily involved in martial arts. Actually, like that was my go-to thing. Like I basically trained 6 or 7 times a week for like 10 years. So that was my other thing. Although at the time it wasn't really like a typical, the typical trifecta of like volunteering somewhere, having a research job and this and that. So I felt like it disadvantaged me from an application point of view as a medical school applicant, because it seemed on paper like I was not a very well-rounded person. It seemed like I was like, 6 or 7 times a week just doing this one thing all the time. But I think, if you're into something like that is really shaping the way you think about the world, you becoming an expert at it, you're honing a craft, like these kind of things, there is actually a way to spin that in your favor when you're doing your application. That's actually much more valuable than kind of like nitpicking and like doing a couple of hours of this, a couple of hours of that to make yourself look more well-rounded. So I think the application systems are a lot more accepting of that these days. So anyway, I think what a major takeaway from all three of us is that you can go into this environment, not have like been planning your life from grade 9, and you still can make it. I think that's probably the most important lesson.
Thank you so much. So as I said, unfortunately, that was all the time we had for those questions. However, if anyone in the audience has any more questions, please feel free to forward those questions to the email where you received the Zoom link from, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So with our panel coming to a close, on behalf of Project Pulse Winnipeg, we would like to send a sincerest thanks to our panelists for taking the time out of their busy schedules and sharing their truly insightful experiences and insights, and just answering all of the audience's questions with such thoughtful answers. Your expertise in your research and your experiences bring forth a very inspiring and educating discussion. And in addition to our wonderful panelists, we would like to extend our gratitude to the audience members. Thank you so much for making this event a success by registering to attend and for sending in all of your amazing questions. And again, if you have any more, please feel free to send them to the email you receive a Zoom link from, and we'll get back to you. So thank you so much just for being here today.
Thanks for having us. Oh.
That's okay.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for the invite, Vicky.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm super proud of this executive team, and I'd like to thank Vicky once again for hosting the panel today. Just quickly, we recommend that those who have their video cameras on, please fill out and return the waivers. We hope to receive those emails promptly, and we recommend that you follow us on social media to stay up to date on when our upcoming events are happening. So yes, of course, we hope to see you all again next time, and thank you again to all of you. Have an excellent evening.